neuromodulators act postsynaptically. So does anybody remember the three names, Jill?
We looked at.
I was going to say fast.
Okay, fast.
Fast.
Which is called
Direct.
direct.
We wrote that word down.
We wrote fast and direct as separate words.
Okay, so fast was one of them, and that's where the neurotransmitter is. It's just what we know is a typical binding, right? And there's a couple ways.
What if we just called that a ligand gate?
Well, it is, and all,
Yeah.
and all of these are ligand gates, but they have different ways that they are communicating.
Right.
So this is on the PowerPoint, I actually put on the PowerPoint slide I have direct. So when you look at the PowerPoint, you'll see that I wrote in direct up here. I did, and then it just describes a typical fast ligand gate. All right, and then the next one was called indirect, and it's indirect because
It has that
It has
shuttle.
to have a little
It has a shuttle.
protein.
Has to go
That's-
somewhere else.
it has to go somewhere else. It's got it in order to open up an ion chain. We've got sound effects. We've got all kinds of other. I love that. We're disconnecting. We have like a little ferry system, like a little tugboat, little, whatever. That then signals the opening of the gate. That's indirect. It's not as fast as direct, and it's not as slow as the next one called second messenger or cascaded cellular event. Yeah.
Yes.
Either one will work.
They're times of charm.
Yes, it binds. Yeah. So we have like this little egg-shaped guy now for the second messenger, and then that is going to create all sorts of changes that could be minutes, days, and making significant changes in. And I often say protein because that's such a big deal about stimulating the protein productions as needed because of how much they are in demand in the system, in our system in general. And then here you can, on this chart, so here's a picture of what they do, that second messenger, the slowest of all, right? So it's going to go fast, it goes fast, and then slower, and then like minutes, and then we go to days. So with the second messenger, we modulate calcium levels inside the cell, affect cellular metabolism and other processes. So it's really affecting many systems within our body, but it's what's creating that cascading events. Activating genes, increasing synthesis of cellular products. So all of those are second messengers here. And you see how these are all G protein modulated, mediated, but the first column is just that little shuttle system. So it is it's going to prolong the opening of ion channels. That it's going to have a longer lasting effect. Good, fantastic. All right. So any questions other than what we've been talking about just now? Anything else that's on your mind before we get through chapter 4? So I'll let you think about that, but I'm going to say something while you're thinking about that. So chapter 4 we'll get mostly through today, and then chapter 5 is very brief. It's not brief in your book, but it's very brief on the outline. And I've posted it, and you may have seen that it is one page if it's back to back.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Or narrow the margins.
Or narrow the margins. There you go. There you go. So we are on track for our celebration of learning next week in this class.
This class? Next week.
Next week.
Next week, Tuesday.
Next week. Oh, next.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
So, and when I was driving my daughter to school this morning, because my other daughter's going to school, I said to her, I gotta start finding a different word than favorite, because it's one of my favorite words. Because of what we're talking about today, neuroplasticity. It's a really fascinating topic. And if you were to, you guys good? You were looking for materials? Yeah? Thank you. neuroplasticity, you could spend a lot of time just looking at every hit you get, because there's so much out there. There's so much out there, and it makes it hard for me to decide what to put up here, but I always decide by length and quality, so I try to find a good combination of both when I'm presenting in class. And if you find anything else to share, you be sure to do that. Let me know and I can post it. So we're going to start out with these concepts of habituation, and then we go into long-term potentiation. And I've got several little clips to show you about habituation, about these processes. So first of all, before we see the clip, habituation is this idea of decreasing a response to a repeated stimulus. So you've got a stimulus that either, number one, you're trying to decrease. Did you turn that on?
Yep.
Thank you. That you're trying to decrease, or it's something that just automatically happens, like the classic example is clothing and jewelry and anything that might be new, where you're kind of getting used to it, and then you stop paying attention to it. In the world of physical therapy, we use habituation to desensitize someone who's had a really sensitive, like some neural changes that might make their skin really sensitive, or a particular injured area sensitive. This is even done in desensitivity training with children who have a disorder where they're sensitive to everything. Where you start with something very soft like cotton on that area or areas, and then you gradually increase the coarseness of what is being applied to that area to desensitize that feeling of it being it doesn't feel benign to them. We do want it to feel over time like it's not the reason the nervous system has to alarm you. So we're trying to desensitize that. So decrease, and so what we're trying to do at a cellular level is decrease the release of excitatory neurotransmitters. We're trying to get an inhibitory reaction. So all this stuff we've been talking about, presynaptic and postsynaptic inhibition, we're trying to get those, we're trying to stimulate an inhibitory response so that we don't respond alarmingly to whatever. And I'm just talking sensitivity on the skin. This could be visual, it could be auditory, tinnitus, ringing in the ears. You can actually desensitize that via a little hearing aid apparatus by desensitizing the ringing portion, and then and then also with dizziness, with vestibular disorders. Depending on the type of vestibular disorder, we might have someone do activities like they might be walking along and they stop, and that's when they get really dizzy. We might work up to that to desensitize the response. You have to work up to it very, very slowly and very methodically. Okay. So So with habituation, if you're just doing a kind of a brief habituation, resolves within a very short time once the stimulation ceases. So habituation can actually be the beginning to what we're going to call long-term changes. But if you just do a little bit of habituation, then you don't have a lot of longevity with the effect. Prolonged repetition may cause decreases in synaptic connections. That's what we would look for long-term. So when we're really trying to desensitize someone, we're looking for disconnecting those kind of errant synapses. So we can have kind of a short-term habituation and a long-term habituation. And long-term habituation is what we are generally shooting for in therapy. So I've got this kind of quirky, I think this is the right, I've got several of them, and I think this is the one that's really quirky, but in the end, it's really, I think, good. in this clip, they will also talk about sensitization. They'll also talk about sensitization, and I should tell you a little bit about that first. And sensitization is the opposite, where you're actually trying to stimulate and make synaptic connections. And the best example I can think of in my life right now is I drive a very quiet car, and when I come out of my driveway, I've got what we like to call the it bush. It's this really cool evergreen that I love and my husband doesn't. So I don't ever want to trim it back, so it really looks like cosmetics. So cool. But it's right on the corner. So we go out of our driveway, and we've got a rose garden here, and then we've got a garden, and then we've got some evergreens. And so as I back out, I have to be extra careful because people don't hear me, and I can't. The it bush makes it hard to see, and so I have. And I've always had to be super careful because of the it bush, but the it bush is getting bigger and bigger. So I become very sensitized to any noise that I hear coming up the street. It's a quiet neighborhood, but it's kind of one of the main streets. So I'm very aware of sound, and I'm realizing I've become really, really, really aware over time because I've sensitized to it because of safety. One of the first weeks, during the first week I had the car, I was pulling out, and my neighbor was riding his bike up the street, and I almost hit him because it's also hard to see out of a Prius when you first get it. It's especially if you're my height and the way that I can see fine now. But at first, you have to kind of get used to where to look. And fortunately, he has a Prius too, so he made a very wide curve as he saw me coming out, knowing that it might just be. And he said that to me. He said, "I know that that's hard to see out of it, and I understand. So thank you for not hitting me, but I didn't know my bicycle anyway." So anyway, sensitization is the opposite of habituation, where you're trying to actually become more sensitized, and they will address that in here as well. Okay, so you know that the words don't match up to their mouth and all that stuff, but just pay attention to the words and